What are the best strategies to grow a new nonprofit quickly? How does a nonprofit founder go from volunteer to paid executive director? What are some of the things you need to learn and get training in to be successful in social impact? I am back with another nonprofit founder story to share the answers to those questions and more. I'm super excited for you to meet my friend Tyrone Nance, the executive director of It's Bigger Than Us in Los Angeles, California. If we are meeting for the first time, hi, I'm Amber Melanie Smith. I'm a nonprofit founder, social entrepreneur, and social impact YouTuber. I have over 250 other videos on this channel, all about fundraising, nonprofits, mobilizing your community to do good, all sorts of great things. Go check those out, and I hope that you find this video helpful. Don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to this channel also. Final thought before we jump in here, my website changemakercafe.com has more resources for you if you are on a journey of making an impact. I hope you'll check out my neatly organized video categories so you can find exactly the topics you're looking for, as well as some other tools and resources for you in your work. And of course, don't forget to join my weekly newsletter, Changemaker Mondays. The link is going to be below this video, where I send out weekly tips and strategies and funding opportunities to help you do your great social impact work. All right, let's go meet Tyrone. All right, here we go. Tyrone, good to see you again.
Good to see you too, Amber.
All right. I am really excited to share your story with everyone on our social impact channel here. You are a founder that has gone full-time. You're full-time, right? In your nonprofit?
Full time.
Full-time. Wow. So we're going to tell that story. We're going to talk all about how you started, how you got here, and what people who might be in the same position can learn along the way. So first, let's start out with, who are you? What is your role at your organization, and what does your organization do? Who do you serve?
No, thank you so much for having me on here, and I'm ready to just give all the tips, tricks, and information to help everybody on their journey. So my name is Tyrone Nance. I'm the founder and executive director of a nonprofit called It's Bigger Than Us, based in Los Angeles, where we focus on connecting communities with essential resources and support, ensuring that every person has a chance to succeed. And we do that through our concept. In order to bridge gaps, you need bridge builders. And so over the past 5 years, we have started with essentially nothing but an idea and a dream to be able to be a resource for the community during the pandemic. And, in 2024, we just celebrated our 5 years in existence. And I'm ready to talk about those first 2 years of not being able to be a salary, paid nothing, to now being able to take care of myself and my family.
That's amazing. So go back with me those 5 years to the very beginning. What did you see in your community that told you, I need to start a nonprofit? I need to do this.
That's a good question. I think it's a two-part question, because it's like, what did I see in the world? And then what also did I see in the community? And this was during a time when everybody was protesting, and I wanted to go from screaming and marching and saying unity in the streets with everybody to actually making some sort of systemic change in the community I grew up with, which is South Central. And it just by chance, I was already involved in a number of different initiatives in the community. I've worked in the nonprofit sector up until that point for 10 years. And so when a principal of a local high school called Crenshaw High School reached out to me and said, hey, our students aren't coming to class. Our students aren't coming to register. The parents aren't coming. Can you gather some folks, get some supplies going, and see what we can do? So turn that one initiative, which we end up giving the whole entire school school supplies and resources. We didn't have even enough funding to get backpacks. We just had like the papers, the books, the notepad, and like a ribbon with like a "Have a great school year, like you're the best," on it, which was so special.
Mhm.
And now, we're able to give out 5,000 fully loaded backpacks every year. But sort of back to that moment, during that sort of initiative that was a week long, we had over 150 volunteers, diverse groups come out from everywhere. And this is sort of the group where um people were like just protesting all over. Everybody was involved in this. So everybody that was a part of my social media or that was a part of the community was able to kind of get involved. But this was the kicker that I saw that was a sort of a disconnecting factor was all of the protests and everything that was happening was in Hollywood, in downtown Los Angeles, but nothing was like in the inner city communities. And so I'm like, hey, let's take that energy, that enthusiasm, that passion for change and bring it to the community and target it at this school. And so by the end of that initiative, we had so much momentum. We incorporated our paperwork. We got our 501c3 status because those are separate. When you file to get your EIN number, those are two separate transactions. And then, just got all the bank accounts and got everything in the row. Even though we didn't have any money, we barely had any partners, we had anything, but there was a vision. And so that vision allowed us to sort of create the platform and the space that matriculated years later of growth. But that first initiative that we did became our staple event that moved to just an event to serve in the community to now being a festival that we have now branched out into other cities like Inglewood, Culver City, even Miami, to be able to create impact around it.
That's amazing. And thinking about what you were saying about that first year or so, I talked to a lot of nonprofit founders, and the ones that seem to be able to really pull it out and like succeed within a couple of years and get the ball rolling and get that momentum, they always have this one thing in common. And you hit on it just now, which is that social capital, those social connections, the power of community, right? If you try to go at this alone, it's going to take so much longer. But if you have the support, and not just the support, but hearing you talk about it, it sounds like you also had a feedback loop with the community that you actually wanted to serve directly, who could give you that input.
Yes, exactly. You want your work to be bi-directional. You want to be able to give feedback, share the research, but you also want to take that information that the community residents, whoever you're serving within your programs, to help shape it and help grow it. And the more you can keep folks sort of like engaged from a bi-directional lens, the stronger your programming, the stronger your trust, the relationship will be. And oftentimes, especially with founders that have gone full time, they're always thinking, "Hey, how can I increase my capital?" But when you're increasing your capital, you're also trying to scale at the same time. And sometimes, within that format, you lose touch with the community, you lose touch with the people you're serving, and you just become like this like standard cookie cutter that we've seen so many with some of these legacy foundations. And so you want to stay engaged with whoever you're serving from a bi-directional lens for maximum impact.
Starting a nonprofit is very similar to starting a oh my gosh, to starting a business in a lot of different ways. And to have a successful business and a successful nonprofit, something I talk about in a lot of other videos is this need to do market research. I'm curious, taking back to those beginning years, what was market research for you? What did you do? What's your approach to understanding the need more deeply so you can really create a good strategy?
That's a great question. I think it's different for every single person because every single person starts their nonprofit for a different purpose and a different reason. So I like to say you need to go from outreach to programming to policy. Outreach, you're canvassing, you're volunteering at organizations that have the direction you want to go in. You're collaborating, you're partnering with them just to see what their community looks like. What does it feel like? Is this a space that you feel like you can invest in with more added, or are you sort of an adjacent partner? And then listening sessions, town halls, focus groups, reports. If you're doing events, what kind of reports are you pulling? Are you looking at, um, uh, I mean, whatever lens you want to look at, put that together, and then you can hold that up to what the national, the local, the surveys are also going on. But then programming, because this is where, Amber, this is where a lot of folks get sort of mixed up. They will create a nonprofit and immediately go to programming or to policy. Hey, I want to change this legislative um, aspect. Or, hey, you know what? I'm going to start this program because this is what I feel like the need is. It's not about what you need, it's about what the community needs. So you need to do your due diligence and start with outreach, survey the landscape, do everything you can to turn that rock over so you can better understand it. Because there's experts that are already out there that are researching this, whether they are near or far. Do your due diligence. Then from there, hey, based off this survey and study and research, I now can move to programming. And sometimes programming takes 2 to 3 years to start. If I go back to when we first talked about in 2020 when we did this back to school initiative at Crenshaw High School, we didn't get into school programming until 2024. We were just giving resources and doing surveys and really just building that authentic relationship and seeing who's in this ecosystem. Now that we're in programming, we're more efficient. Just a really quick segue. I was in one of our young community builder programs at a middle school the other day, and one of the students reminded me that when he was in elementary school, we were giving toys because we adopt schools every year and to give them toys and resources and just love on them. And this student was like, "Yeah, I remember you from my elementary school." And now this kid is in middle school, learning how to be the best young community builder, civic engaged leader. But that would not have been so if I started with programming. And so people need to pause and do some research on it.
I love that. I love the pause. So important. And that's something I talked about in other videos too is don't assume you know what the need is unless you talk to the actual people that you have a goal of serving because they might surprise you. They might tell you something completely different than you expected.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
I'm always curious what people are doing before they up and decide to start a nonprofit. I heard you mention earlier that you've been working with other nonprofits before, so you have a little bit of that background, it sounds like. But what were you doing pre It's Bigger Than Us?
What was I doing? Which is a great question. Because the organization is bigger than us, has emerged and splashed in the LA uh, business community in such a way. People were like, "Where did you come from?" Well, I love that question. I came from the Black church. That's where I learned all of my advocacy, and from there, I was introduced to the work being done in Skid Row. And I felt like that was a place where I can learn, grow, develop, but also give my resources and my time. So I spent more than 5 years just sitting down with the elders and different people doing amazing work in that sector and space. I was a volunteer coordinator and was a case manager. I was everything. Skid Row was absolutely my home for a little bit. And then from there moved into this different aspect of advocacy and case management and volunteerism world. And so I was I had my hands in everything, and even before it was called as bigger than us, it was called as bigger than ball. And so and that was the initiative. It never got incorporated, but it was me wanting to figure out ways to engage my community. And there was some real ups and downs with that, and I was like, I'm good. Like I'm just gonna work for a nonprofit forever. But I was growing at such an alarming pace. My work time was spent in the nonprofit advocacy space. My free time was spent in the nonprofit advocacy space. I was just immersed in it. And so eventually I got to the road where all of my supervisors was like, "Hey, you may be better off like trying to explore other options." They didn't say it in that way, but like it was sort of like you're really advanced for what you're doing. But I didn't know that it would come in such a way where it would just like a aha moment. And that aha moment happened I was in the middle of Hollywood and Highland. And Amber, when I promise you, like, the what happened in 2020 probably needs a ton of research behind it and just a ton of just story dialogue. But I was out participating and advocating with everybody across the world, for solidarity. Um, and sort of in that moment, all of my expertise and my passion came together and I began leading major movements. And I had no idea. I had imposter syndrome. I was like, I'm not MLK. I'm not such and such. Like, why do I have a mic in my hand? Um, but quickly, my board member who was there during that time and just everybody around me was like just so encouraging for me to be able to say, wow, it's bigger than us. This moment is bigger than us. This time is bigger than us. And to be able to take that sort of moment with me being in Hollywood and Highland, surrounded around thousands of people with a blowhorn on a mic, just freestyling what love and unity looked like together in this world. It immediately was like, you got to go and create something. And so I remember going back to my job and telling them the story like, hey, I just came back from my lunch break. I just led a protest with, a few thousand folks. And I gave the mic over because I needed to come back to work. And they were like, why are you here? Like, why are you here? Seriously. And so at that moment, I knew it was a special moment to kind of transition into something, but I knew it would take time. I knew it was not an easy journey into like full time. Like even in some regards now, 5 years in, there's still so many things that I want to accomplish and do from an individual and a team perspective that I know that it'll take 10, 20, even 30 years to accomplish, but I'm patient.
Yeah. When you study social change movements, it takes 20, 30, 50, 60, 100 years or more.
Exactly, but you know what, Amber? But it's also too like, coming off the cusp of like the microwave generation where like everybody, you got your degree or you went to this program or this person, you're immediately supposed to be given this baton, but that's not actually true. And it shouldn't be that way. You should be able to you got to put work in to better understand who you're serving, what you're doing, so that when those moments of great challenge and controversy come, you can stand 10 toes down, chin up, chest out, and be like, hey, this is the right decision because the community says this, our partner says this, the board says this, and this is the way that we're going in this direction. But if you're just quick to like, hey, I'm ready to start this nonprofit because it's a tax write-off, or I'm ready to start this nonprofit because it's maybe cool or trendy, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. This sort of a life calling, in a sense, and you should invest in it as such.
I think it's helpful for people who are starting nonprofits to have a transparent sense of what the financial journey is going to look like as well for the organization, because running a nonprofit is expensive, especially depending on, your mission and what kind of resources you need. But also, you've got to know that you can pay your own bills too if this is something that you want to do full time and that the nonprofit needs you to do full time. So thinking back to the first year, I'm curious, do you remember what your first year budget was? What was that number? And then what was the budget this year?
So the first year budget was practically non-existent. I mean, the resources for our back to school and for our Christmas was somewhere in like the 10,000 range. But it all was just resources. Nothing um, was an extra expense bucket. 2021, we had a revenue stream of around 30,000. Our expenses for 2021 was about 15,000. And then I also want to add the category of in-kind donations because
Yeah.
if you can begin to incorporate in-kind donations into your programming, into your outreach, that's another way of sort of grasping like your impact. So in 2021, we had about 100,000 in-kind donations we were able to give out. But the jump from 2021 to 2022 was amazing. the revenue jump from 2021 to 2022 was 30,000 to 350,000.
10x. Wow.
Yeah. And the expenses was around 270,000. In-kind donations jumped from 100,000 to 500,000. And I know you're
Wow.
gonna have like probably some questions in between, but just jumping to 2023, we went from 350,000 to 760,000. And then expenses about 700,000, and in-kind donations we were at 2.2 in our in-kind donations. And so um that first year, I mean the 2022 is when I was able to get my salary. My salary was $45,000.
Okay.
And then in 2023, my salary jumped up to 70,000, where it's currently at. Um, and in between there, the 2021 to 2022, we didn't really have, outside of general operating expenses like programming, software, office supplies, printing, licensing, just all your legalities. That was sort of like the bigger expense. Then in 2023, when we got our building, that became about, I would say like around like 30% of our our revenue, um, where it became, really important to make sure you had budgeting equipment and you had personnel that were going to pay attention to every single penny, every single dollar that we're utilizing, because now, having a building is such a it's a dream, but it's also an expense that does not go away, and you got to make sure you stay on top of it, or that may not only affect your business but affect the community. And you don't want to start something and then have to remove something based off not being able to, keep track of your finances, or maybe not have the right system in, or maybe not have the right accountability structure in for you to succeed. So much money, much security, and and things you have to do to make sure you are structurally sound.
Much money, more problem.
Yeah, I know. I know. I was like, that's a biggie line. More money, more problems. But it's not a problem. It's more
No,
of
I'm
a
just, but
it's a great.
I think what you said though is important because I think people don't think of all the little things that come with having all the programs and a building and stuff. Like, yes, your increasing budget is awesome, but now you've got to make sure, to your point, you've got really solid accounting software and internal controls and financial processes that will protect that money, because you as a nonprofit can get audited at any time.
Anytime, anytime. And you want to make sure you are in a position to where you're always good. Don't risk it. Don't, oh, I'm gonna do it next week, or I want to. No, stay on top of your game, because you never know when that happens. And it's at sort of all the different levels. As you grow and you climb. So make sure you stay there. But then also, Amber, another thing, um, with you know, going from founder to full time, is you got to make sure you're not the smartest person in the room. I mean, it's the oldest sort of like tagline there kind of is. And I know sometimes in like the founder's positions, they want to be the judge, the jury, they want to be everything all at once, but you need to equip yourself with experts around you. Even if you know everything, still equip yourself with experts around you to cross those T's and dot those I's to make sure that you are always in compliance. Compliance, compliance, compliance.
Thinking a little bit about this momentous rise, it makes me think of like a nonprofit going viral or blowing up, but like the momentum that you've talked about, 10x in a year, is pretty incredible. And I know when that happens, it can feel really overwhelming, especially if you're just one person. But I think you weren't just one person. You got some help, didn't you? Talk to me a little bit about some of the staff you hired to help you out.
Absolutely. Again, one of our mottos is, in order to bridge gaps, you need bridge builders. And so we at It's Bigger Than Us want to make sure we're surrounding ourselves with people that are impacting every sort of sector of what a community organizer should be looking at, and the lenses. And so a stat that I'm really proud of is in 2020, we were able to employ over $220,000 worth of contracted folks in our community, Black, Brown, queer, Indigenous, to begin going deeper in this advocacy work. And that was also the same year that I also became full time, making $45,000. And so the sacrifice to just come in with 45 versus coming in at a higher level was intentional because we wanted to make sure we were still sowing into the soil of advocacy and allyship and activism in our community with people that maybe not have had an opportunity to be maybe subcontracted or hired to be able to do this work. And sometimes, in the nonprofit world, you come in with pennies in a dollar, but you have your hopes and your passion with big dreams. So really proud of that stat.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, I think about sometimes this idea of community engagement, and I've been a lifelong advocate of volunteer service. The nonprofit that I started was centered on volunteer service, but a difficult realization I had throughout that journey was not everyone can volunteer. Not everyone has the time, capacity, ability. You might be working 3 jobs. You might be taking care of a family as a single parent. You might be doing this or that. So there's been this movement in the nonprofit world over the past couple of years to figure out, and you've really honed in on this and tapped into this, how can we make it possible for everyone to participate? How can we make sure that the communities that we're engaging are also able to participate? And if that means paying them, that's okay. And people deserve that compensation for their labor, and that capital, that social capital that they've built, and the trust that they've built with the neighborhoods and the communities that they're serving is so valuable. So I think that's a really cool, unique thing that you are doing that you should be really excited about. And I know you are.
Thank you. Thank you. I absolutely appreciate that. And someone that, coming also from like the volunteer world, man, I would honestly really encourage a lot of people that are interested in starting nonprofits to start maybe even in the volunteer coordinator space and volunteer management space because you get to really begin to understand the language around advocacy. You get to understand the perspective and thoughts of people that have like an heart and a passion to want to help, but they may, hey, I don't have time to do that. Or I mean, I wish I can do this, or I have this. Can this work? And we're at such a really cool point where we can sort of like help figure out the best modes and ways to volunteer, which I think transfers in an amazing way to really looking at a local community of ways to be able to build strong advocacy, whether it's through the lenses of homelessness or it's through the lenses of school engagement, or if it's through the lens of whatever the lens is. I think having that volunteer sort of coordinator or that lens to be able to say, hey, I want to help you find your purpose and passion in the work that you want to kind of do is such a gateway to what we actually really need support in the community, because you, me, and so many others that are watching this are the answers and the prayers for our politicians, for our other nonprofits, for our schools, for the different businesses around the community to build a stronger, more established community that can thrive.
Something we haven't talked about yet, but gets a lot of questions on my channel, is all about the relationship with the board of directors, especially as a founder and an executive director. Go back in time to a couple of years ago when you were first starting out. I'm curious, how did you form? How did you find people to be on the board? How did you form a board?
That's a good question. Big shout out to the IBT board. They it it's such a blessing because I feel like I got handed the best board in the world on a silver platter, and I'm like, thank you so much. I mean, the board was there from like day one. Yes, we've added on to it, but like the board was there from the very beginning of what do you want? I want a building. How can we help serve you? Okay, we're gonna give you the best, resources ever. And it wasn't just even money, it was in-kind donations, it was partnerships, it was so much. And so when it came to even before I was even thinking about money, the board was like, you got to make sure you take care of yourself. You got to make sure you're compensated. You got to make sure like the different variations are good. And so we started off with a very small board, 3 to 4, and then now it's sort of morphed into like 4 to 8. But I'm so glad we didn't just add the people that were inquiring to be on the board, even though they may have been good for that moment, but we were planning for the future. And so we wanted to make sure the board that was going to be surrounding me and the team was efficient enough to see the future of us being in other cities and states and deepening our impact. And so now we have folks that are really helping us change the landscape of the world. And so it's been a process. It's probably one of the hardest things you can do because it you have to have a lot of trust in others to be able to see your vision. But you also have to be willing to be like, especially as founders, like we think everything that we do is just gold and like every idea is just the one that's gonna, and we need people to say, no, that's not it. Let's actually change it. Let's twist it up a little bit. Whether it's your mission. I remember I was at a party at Nobu in Malibu. It was like for donors, nothing like I just go to on a regular, but it was nice. Shout out to the donors and board members that invite me to cool places. But we were sitting down and we're like, yeah, we were sitting down with this celebrity and this politician and this, and they were asking about the work and we gave the mission and they just looked at us. I think we need to change it. And I was like, well, what did you say? Like, did you say this? What this? And then I was just like, I get it. I get it. And they were like, we'll have our meeting, next month and we'll talk about it. And like, that was a moment where I was just like, wait, we need a new board. We need new board members. You know what I mean? But no, but like that's real. The relationship between the board of directors and the founder and executive director has to be special. And I'm so glad that we have a really amazing board. But advice I would give to other people is to make sure the board that you're building out, um, can they process and understand your mission, vision, and direction that you're going?
Yep.
Also, too, make sure that when you're asking them to be on the board to sit on there, make sure that the performances and the things that you are asking them to do that they're actually able to do. Because you don't want to invite somebody to be a board member because their social media followers, because they're connected to somebody. They may, have access to this one thing. You need people that are going to collectively build with you, especially in those infancy stages. I get it if you are, a legacy foundation where you are all over the world and you need that executive director to, be accountable to this board. I get that model. But when you're starting off in this way, you need to be able to grow with your board. And then you need your board to be able to welcome more people on that can actually tack onto your vision because you need to sort of limit your responsibilities so that you can continue to focus on the future, the vision. So part of my job now going into, 2025 is narrowing our focus, our programming, our efforts, deepening our research and our understanding of community engagement and outreach and how we can be a solve for some of the world's most serious crises and issues. So that's my focus. My focus is not on some of the other tedious things that may somehow occupy founder space. So board of directors should be an extension of not just who you are, but what you want to become for the community, for the world.
I love that future thinking mentality. And when I talk to people about recruiting that board, I always think about what are your goals for the next couple of years? You want to recruit to be able to achieve those, just like you're saying. And
I
I'm
think that's
curious. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that's incredible. What would you I have a question for you. Like, what would you say to those individuals that sort of have like these great ideas and maybe a vision for a season or two, but don't have that vision or season for like the next like 5 years?
You mean board members or for founders who feel that way?
Founders that are wanting to maybe cast a bigger vision to be able to share that with the board of directors versus like, hey, this is what I got. Can you sort of form the rep?
Here's what I would say to that. And I think you nailed it when you first talked about the feedback loop in your community. You're always going to unearth more needs, more things to do,
Mm,
more ways to grow, more ways to scale. If you keep that line to the people you're serving, you're going to figure out ways to grow for sure. It's just going to happen organically because they know what they need. And if you can find a way to bring the board along for that journey of engaging and asking those questions and getting curious, then in it seems to me that there'd be no way they couldn't see a bigger vision if they're hearing the same feedback and questions that you're hearing in your research. Does that make sense?
yeah, that's so good. I just got chills. I literally just got chills off that response. I just saw the future like board member like smiling and seeing how they signed up for yeah, I'm gonna join this nonprofit. I'm gonna help this. And then like in a few years their lives are just radically transformed because of the investment. So beautiful.
Well, I think one thing, speaking of that dynamic between founder and board, people who are ready to make that transition and the organization being ready to make that transition to having a full-time executive director, I get questions about how do they talk about that with their boards? How do they, because the board has to vote to hire
Hmm.
you. You can't just hire
Hmm.
yourself. Tell me a little bit about your experience with
They actually sat me down and they sat me down and said that enough is enough. I struggled. I think one of my things is I love to give. I love to serve. I'll do it for free, and they told me that this would not be sustainable. Especially the first year that we hit like a million in like revenue, we practically gave that million away. And they were like, "Hey Ty, like we need for you to take this salary so that you can start like building a more sustainable way of doing outreach in the community. We can't have you doing, you know, uh 60, 70 hours, with this amount. We actually need you to start doing less and actually increase your revenue, take time to go on hikes, take time to go on trips." And so the board actually has been like a very strong coach for me. A few of them also have been on boards prior, so they have been sort of like my anchor in like helping me navigate what that looked like, especially in the beginning stages, because I was just like, it was growing so fast. I was just like, this isn't my money. This is the community's money. This isn't like any of, and they were like, hey, Ty, like, actually, like, this is your salary. This is what we need you to focus, just a little bit more on like your health, your wellness. Which honestly, Amber, like a lot of the founders, like we run ourselves ragged, with, wanting to put one foot in front of the other for humanity. And it's the board of directors that say, hey, before you take that step, make sure you have the proper shoes on.
true story. I love that metaphor. Oh, well, this is awesome. I really appreciate your time today. Do you have any final thoughts for people on the journey of starting a nonprofit and becoming a full-time executive director?
Don't chase money, chase impact. You really need to focus on the work, the research. Try to um, take on a persona of a research organizer or social scientist, or any of these titles that allow you to build relationships with the people you're serving, but then also understand the data and the stats behind it. Because once you're like, if you're doing the work, the the funding will find you. The funding will find you. And I know we didn't get to go into like even great detail about that, but sort of our funding structure and cycle was, I would say, an unorthodox method from my understanding. It wasn't, we didn't get to that first million just writing grants or applying for this or that. It was like people saw us doing the work. And shout out to the LA Federation of Labor. They were like, hey, we're doing a project called the People's Project, and we're investing in founders and we're investing in organizations to do capacity building growth. So they gave us $250,000, you know? And then, once we're able to get into school programming, that allowed us to be sustainable where, we were able to bring in, $500,000, throughout the year just by, doing what we were already doing. And then our staple events actually produced a significant amount of revenue to where, we were getting a lot of sponsors, a lot of recognition to where we were bringing in hundreds of thousands of dollars just by hosting a back to school festival for, 5,000 plus people in the community with backpacks and resources and concerts and, just really amazing community engagements. And so the grants sort of came to us in the form of, hey, I'm working on this grant and I think you should apply. Here's a direct link. Let me know when you're done. Or an organization that you're already doing work with may say, hey, you're a great candidate for this, whether it's a Lululemon or a Nike or LA Cares or, multitude of organizations. They have kind of come to our front door to be able to help serve and help us build out our financial stream. So by just focusing on the work, Amber, we've been able to make sure all of our needs have been met plus more, and we've been able to grow at a substantial level just by focusing on the research, focusing on the work. And so individuals focusing on the research and the work and really helping broaden their understanding, that will come. Like if you do the work, that will come, especially if you're following Amber. Like everybody in the world should be following Amber because
Oh,
you will be able to go from founder to full time times three. And I wish everybody the best on their journey. Please make sure you follow It's Bigger Than Us on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. Again, my name is Tyrone Nance, and I'm so excited for your future and for your journey going from founder to full time. You got this.
Oh man, Tyrone's organization has just blown up. It has grown so fast, and I really love just how encouraging he is of others out there trying to do similar work and get their social impact efforts up and running, and his community-centric approach to all of the stuff that he's doing. I'd love to hear what you thought. Share your comments, your questions below this video, and let's get a conversation going. As always, I hope you found this helpful and interesting. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content and check out my website, changemakercafe.com, with all sorts of other resources and tools for you in your social impact work. I hope to see you next time. I'm Amber Melanie Smith. Bye.